Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Toronto and Bakersfield and Fullerton, Atlanta, San Diego. We're going to be getting started in just about a minute. Beautifully clear San Diego, Long Beach.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Klein with the CSU Chancellor's Office, and I am directing ERWC as an interim from now until we hire somebody, and we are in the process of looking. And I want to thank Marc for coming in and doing this presentation for us. We are all very interested in how AI is going to inform the work that we do. Stephanie, next slide. We are in ERWC, we have a lot of different ways that you can stay connected with us. You can visit our ERWC blog, listen to the podcast, join us for various ERWC events. Every third Thursday of the month, we have a webinar, and follow us on social media. And on social media, we are at CSU ERWC on X, CSU ERWC on Instagram, Expository Reading and Writing Curriculum on Facebook, and the ERWC blog is ERWC blog. And if you don't have any of those, you might want to bookmark them so that you can find and get our updates and our news as we are bringing you exciting new curriculum from ERWC. And our next webinar is going to be December 7th at 4:30 with Seth. And he is going to be talking about assessment. And if you miss one of our webinars, you can go to the Writing Success website, and you can see the webinars that are recorded there that we've had in the past. And you can visit our website to learn more about the ERWC workshops that we have going on throughout the state of California. And we will also be at Kate this year. We are going to be at the Hyatt Regency in LAX, and Kate is uncovering hidden gems, and we will have a ERWC presence. I think we have 3 or 4 different members from our community that will be presenting at Kate. And in June 2024, we will have a Northern and a Southern California ERWC Literacy Conference, and we hope some of you can plan to join us during those as well. And we are in the process of developing our middle school modules with integrated and designated ELD support. And as soon as those are available, they are in the piloting stages as we speak, and we'll hopefully be able to make them available in September of 2024. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deborah Robinson, who's going to introduce our speaker today.
Hey, thank you, Z. Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you join us today. I know San Diego said they were perfectly clear. That's not necessarily the case here in San Jose, but the evening is young and we are going to press on. Today's presenter is an academic innovation fellow, a lecturer of writing and rhetoric, and serves as the director of the AI Summer Institute for Teachers of Writing of the AI, or Teachers of Writing at the University of Mississippi. He has developed courses, workshops, and communities of practice on AI in education, and he is here today to collaborate and share ideas on how AI can and is impacting teaching and learning. So please join me in welcoming Marc Watkins to the ERWC community. Thank you for joining us, Marc.
Thank you, Deborah. That's a very warm welcome. I really do appreciate it. It's a little bit dark here in Oxford, Mississippi, where I'm at now too, but it's still a very nice, cool night. I'm going to get started here, and I'm going to share some resources with you all in just a second. Before I do, I just kind of want to share how I kind of came to become some of those things on that list this past year. In May of 2022, I found out about OpenAI's GPT-3's Playground, which was their initial interface of how you can kind of go into it and begin to prompt way back a year and a half ago now. And I went to my chair in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric here in the University of Mississippi and showed him. And he looked at that and I looked at it, much like we all did when ChatGPT came out. Our freak out was a little bit earlier there in May of 2022. And we both said some very choice words aloud in that room. And then we came back the next day and kind of sat down, and he gave me a charge. He said, look, I want you to take a deep dive into this. This seems to be coming because at that time, Microsoft had invested $1 billion into OpenAI. They now have since invested over 10 billion. And he told me, find ways that you can use this pragmatically with your students and ethically, so that they can learn how to do this in a way that doesn't harm what we're trying to do here in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric with their actual learning. So I thought that that would be sort of like this interesting thing that I would do during the summer of 2022. And it has now spiraled into this is presentation, talk, chat number 71 since that time period. So things have obviously gone pretty wild. But we are looking at how AI, specifically generative AI technologies, are being deployed in real time by some of the biggest companies on the planet. I already mentioned Microsoft. Google is now in the game as well too. They actually have a free suite of tools you can sign up for today if you want to test on your own. I will show you how to do that if you'd like. And we just got the announcement that Amazon a few weeks ago partnered with a company called Anthropic. Their gigantic language model, like ChatGPT, is called Claude 2, and they pumped in, I believe, $4 billion into it. So the field is moving along rapidly and expanding, and we are desperately looking for a lodestar in education to show how we can guide this. And that's kind of what we've been trying to do here at the University of Mississippi. This past summer too, I was asked to go ahead and chair a working group. And I also became the director for the AI Teachers Institute this summer. That's 2023. And we were there to train teachers about how they can approach generative AI technologies in their teaching, not just in writing and rhetoric, but also through all fields. We had our first institute there. That's June 1st and June 2nd of 2023. We trained 23 faculty members. We actually paid them for their time. We paid them $1,000 each to come in and get training for it too. It was really great. We had people from the law school, people from education, from computer science. We had people from all across the university. And it's been a wonderful experience that we are hoping to redo again in different forms. We're going to launch another version of that independently here. And then in the spring, theoretically, fingers crossed, we're going to try to do some digital events online too and open them up more to the public. So that's the sort of preamble. I know it's a lot. I know this is overwhelming. I apologize if this freaks people out. It's just kind of where we are right now. But what I want to do now is share in the chat some resources. So if you would like to follow along with me on this Google Doc when I'm going to go ahead and talk today. So I will go and drop this in chat to everyone. Let me go from host to panelist to everyone, because I made that mistake last time. So hopefully you guys can see that. If someone in the screen can give me a thumbs up, they can see that okay in the chat. I appreciate it. And then we will go ahead and share the screen and we will go.
We can see it, Marc.
I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So I stopped doing, I'm going to open up my chat window here too so I can see as well. So I went ahead and stopped doing PowerPoints a while ago because I kept on having to recreate it every 2.5 weeks to do talks. So now I do Google Documents. I share those documents with those resources when we talk to people too. And I know that this goes on and toward the night too, and people sometimes leave these early. So what I want to do is I want to scroll down to the very bottom of the document, just so you guys can go to the second page. And I've gone ahead and donated 200 tickets to a generative AI and education professional development course, which attendees today can use. You all can also post this on your website for your members to actually log into as well. That course will be up for at least a year, and I have been trying to keep up with it. So when a new technology comes out, I do try to play around with it and give a very short tutorial and some ideas about how you might use that in education. So free to sign up, free to use. It's set up like a course too, but most people don't treat it like that. They basically treat it just like a fancy resource hub, and they jump into different lessons as needed, spending 10, 15 minutes of their time when they have free time there as well. Also, some pretty big news lately too for some assignment resources. Just today, Harvard's Meta Lab launched their AI pedagogy project. I'll go and highlight that here so you guys can follow along. It's a free resource hub of materials for educators to help them with AI literacy. It's very impressive. They also have a growing assignment library too. If you are playing around with AI tools as well, you can donate an assignment there. And then Carly, Annette, and Tim published Text Gen Ed through the WAC Clearinghouse. And Carly has agreed to continue that project for the next year with 2 different calls, which is for something called Continuing Experiments in Teaching with Text Generation Technologies. It's an open source, peer-reviewed sort of anthology of assignments. And I was very happy to donate some assignments to that too. It was a peer-reviewed process and was, I think, very helpful for me to get some feedback. Their next call for assignments, if you are interested in submitting there, is on the 30th of this month. They will have another one out in May as well too. And then the last little bit of information about resources is that the MLA-CC AI Task Force will be launching its own resource assignment hub at some point in time before the first of the year. I don't have an exact date for that though, but I just wanted to point this to start off the presentation because I know people leave early sometimes or pop out, but that material is all available there at the bottom. We'll go back up here to the top and we're going to get started. So Microsoft and Google are definitely going all in with AI. I think it's important for people to understand what this looks like, and especially how this is now being marketed toward leveraging your own data and how much data you have available to you in terms of what you can do for your job for productivity. Both Google and Microsoft have plans for education for this technology. Neither of them are ready to roll out with that yet. Microsoft was here on our campus on Wednesday and did make the announcement that their Copilot for Education software will not be ready for months, which made my heart stop palpitating after, and you'll see why in a second. But I want to show you just what this looks like in one of their tools, which is Microsoft Office. So I'm going to click on Copilot here, and we'll briefly play this video so you can see what this looks like. This is Microsoft's AI Copilot tool functioning in Microsoft Word.
Copilot in Microsoft 365 can help you unleash creativity at work. Imagine you need to create a rock-solid proposal to win the business, and you don't have time for writer's block. You can use Copilot to draft a proposal based on your customer notes in OneNote, as well as another internal document. Copilot scans the target files and gets to work, quickly generating a first draft with all the key details from the files you provided. Now, let's say you want this to look like your previous proposals. Copilot can give you a draft in the format you typically use. It inserts product images and pulls in relevant visuals from other files. You can include a short summary at the top of the document. And Copilot can make suggestions to strengthen the proposal, like adding an FAQ, which it will generate for you to refine.
So that is Copilot. That is their big AI tool that they are rolling out now. It is $30 a month per user, and they're only selling it to enterprise plans with, I believe they have to have at least 300 people ready to sign up for it. So very expensive. Google is right up there with them with their actual Google products from their AI tool called Google Duet. They are also going to be upgrading their underlying language model, which is called Gemini. That is going to happen any day now, supposedly, but definitely probably before the first part of the year. If you would like to sign up and try Google Duet, you can do so now. You can access it through Google Labs. I would recommend using a secondary Gmail account because they will be harvesting all the data from your actual account once you sign up for it. Once you do turn it on, though, you get to use it in Docs, Sheets, Slides, Gmail, and Search. I have it already pulled up here too. I'll just pull it up here and search so you guys can see it. I will go here to composition. Okay, so you see this little bit up here at the top where I went ahead and typed in your program. So I'm going to click generate. It's going to generate a search summary based off of the material it pulls live from the web, both from your actual website, Wikipedia, and other public websites. That stub that's generated there too is generally fairly accurate because it's pulling for those websites. The follow-up questions may not always be that case. I'll just click on this one here too that it prompted me to. So what are the objectives of ERWC? And it usually will pull up some public websites material as well too. And I'll let you guys be the judge of that if that's actually accurate or not. But that is how Google basically views these products being used in the public. And it really is going to be then hooked up to your own data, just like you saw within the Microsoft video. In this case, if you're a Google Suite customer, G Suite customer, or a Microsoft Office customer, depending on what flavor of tool you use or your institution uses, that is kind of what is going to happen eventually at some point in terms of where they view these technologies to start going. So I know that's a lot. Should we pause for a second? If I freaked out people enough at this point, there's more, but I just want to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page, and I don't want to leave people too far behind. Okay, well, I'm going to keep on going then. All right.
Go ahead.
Okay, keep on going. Okay, so that's all what's to come. What we've been using and thinking about using with our students for the past year and a half are piloting different types of generative AI technologies based off of user instances in reading, writing, and rhetoric situations. And this is across all of education too, about how this is actually being effective in terms of what's going on. We have collected well over 80,000 words of student reflection for the last year and a half about students using these tools in pilots. We have been fully IRB certified. Getting IRB certified for generative AI before ChatGPT launched was kind of an interesting situation because they really had no idea what it was, and we didn't really know how to explain it very well to them either. But based off of that huge trove of student data, what we can say is that we can say this probably pretty definitively now, is that most students are not that eager to adopt generative AI and replace their writing. So to me, that's a very heartening thing to hear. What they are interested in doing is using the technology for specific instances and use cases. And most importantly, what we found is that chatbot interfaces, like we found with ChatGPT, are just terrible for writers. They don't give them very good affordances. They just ask them to go into an iterative process with a machine without much direction for it as well. And so students really respond better to interfaces that use the actual technology that are purpose-built. And that's really what I've tried to do for the past year and a half now too, is find some purpose-built interfaces where students can explore using generative AI technology with writing assistance, reading assistance, research assistance, and now in feedback assistance as well too. So I'm going to show you the first one, Lex. I think it's probably the most powerful tool that's out there right now. It is free to use, it's free to sign up, and it's free to also sort of explore with yourself and with your students. I also have a student assignment here too about introduction to Lex, which I'll start off with. And this is what I show my faculty here too, and also what I show my students. It's got tons of little short 2-3 minute long videos to get them set up, starting with Lex. It's all about different things about how you can actually use the different generative AI features, but some really good specific features that have a lot of folks have been asking for. Lex actually has a purpose-built feature that identifies the material that was generated within it as AI or human generated too from the source. And so when I show that, and I'll show that to you guys in a minute too, but when I show that to my faculty, I generally hear some sighs of relief from the actual audience when they can see that this is something that can actually happen. Because your student, if you use it with them, can share this technology, share this output with you as well very easily. You can also use it to just get feedback or use it as a general writing assistant. But the one thing I don't do, and the one thing that we've been trying to work on here at the Department of Writing and Rhetoric, is to give our students clear guidelines about when and how to use these types of technology. And so what we have is a main course policy here that's linked, but we also have an assignment specific one about trying to delineate between AI assisted versus AI generated guidance. And we try to color code this as well. And what I'm allowing my students to do for my courses right now that's acceptable is use it for brainstorming and ideation assistance. They can check grammar, spelling, they can get feedback from the AI, they can even explore counter arguments or opposing opinions, and they can also use it to revise. That's all perfectly fine. But if they want to use it for a writing assistant, they are going to have to make sure that they cite it and actually attribute that they used an AI appropriately in their assignment. And there's a very simple way to do that with Lex. And if I'll scroll down further in a second, I also have the MLA APA citation guidelines that I provide for my students too. So that's the green and yellow light. The red light, absolutely no go here, is I'm telling my students, do not use Lex or any other AI tool to generate portions of your writing without acknowledgement or attributing those sources. Use AI to offload the recursive writing process, and do not uncritically adopt an AI tool or technique without reflection. So those are the sort of guiding principles we start off with. And then after our students use Lex for one of the main essay assignments, I ask them to reflect on their choices and their actual sort of experience using Lex through a collect and reflect exercise. And there's some specific questions that I've included here too for them to answer. I won't go through those deeply, but they're there. And this is under a Creative Commons license, so you are free to use this assignment and adapt it to your needs. So that's the sort of background, how we introduce it to our students, and also how I talk to faculty about it. So let's go for a test drive with Lex. Okay, so Lex is very familiar. It's a word processor. It just has generative AI technology built behind it. So it's very familiar for students. This is just my landing page that shows up with my documents when I start opening up Lex for the first time. I will go to this one here, to this test piece about AI literacy. And you can see I've got a little bit of material here set up here for our presentation today. Before I do anything with the actual text here, I want to go over here to the right-hand side where the little cog is. It says settings. So it's really powerful and sort of malleable about what you can do with the actual generative AI technology behind the scenes with this word processor. You can go back to GPT-3 and choose the language model, or ChatGPT, and the developer is giving free access to GPT-4. You can set the creativity from low to high, which gives you a lot more flexibility in what sort of outputs you'd like to see from it. And the thing that people want to see, though, is what was generated by AI versus what was human written. And if we go over here to the top, right next to the commands button, there's a little eyeball that says show AI written text. And when you click on it, the AI generated text glows blue. And it does that natively from the source. So he's actually developed that based off of how the actual machine sends the actual call. I'm sorry, his algorithm sends the call to OpenAI's API, and then includes that material there. Now, I don't police my students with this. I don't tell them that I'm watching them for their AI generation material too. I'm much more interested about seeing how they can identify what was made through generative AI technology and their actual reflections. So if they really wanted to cheat, they could still go to ChatGPT, generate a essay, and just dump it into Lex. It would not show that because it wasn't generated from within Lex itself. But that is kind of what we talk to our students about when we give them some parameters to work with this in guardrails. Most students, when you actually give them option to write with Lex, to choose not to use generative AI technology, though. They choose to use other features within Lex that call upon AI assistance beyond just generating text. And this is what's so cool about Lex, is I can highlight just this paragraph. And if you see over to the right, there's a few little buttons here too. You can traditionally comment like you would with a Google Doc, but then you've got a brain, a person's head with a question mark, and it says Ask Lex. And so you can click on that, And now you can actually use the actual underlying language model to get feedback. So what are some ways you could revise this to make it more engaging? And it sends the call to the AI, and it gives them feedback that is targeted for them. Okay, so there's that. And I can go ahead and resolve and hide this. Now, there's an Easter egg I put in here. Well, it's not really an Easter egg, it's more of a stinker than an Easter egg. If you notice down here too, where it says number 2, the AI did not generate this. I wrote this. The Earth is flat and supported by a series of turtles. Well, occasionally, and sometimes more than occasionally, we get a situation where students will put some illogical ideas within their essays. And one of the neat things about Lex is that it uses the actual underlying language model to provide structured feedback for students based upon how it's been tuned by the developer. In this case, he wants it to be a sort of logical, well thought out piece that would be good for a general audience. And so I'm going to go back here to the top on the right next to the share button. I'm going to click on Ask Lex, and this gives me the whole actual essay feed. And so there's lots of different things you can do now too. You can use the little interface too to kind of communicate back and forth, asking Lex questions about it. But you can also get feedback on your entire draft. Now let's see if the actual underlying language model thinks that if the Earth is flat and supported by a series of turtles. I've always been interested about this. Let's see if it actually catches this. So we'll click on this. It says, can you give me some honest feedback on this draft? Give him some ideas. And now they're going to break it down. And there we go. It says the last sentence, the Earth is flat and supported by a series of turtles, suddenly deviates from your subject without any apparent reason. Unless this is a metaphor or allegory you plan to elaborate upon, it disrupts the flow and confuses the reader. So it's a very kind way for the AI to actually sort of intervene in some ways and give students structured support. So to me, this is the most powerful tool that we piloted so far with students because it's so familiar for them to use because it uses that writing processor background, and it's not really a chatbot interface. It also has those built-in tools where you can correctly identify what was AI generated. And I forgot to show you this part, but if I would like my students to share that with me, they can click on the share button, and then they can show me the actual edit link, and they can copy that link and send it to me. And then I will be able to look in their draft too and be able to identify what was generated by AI or not. There are other little features here that he keeps on developing it too. Well, click off the share button here so we go back. At the very top, we have generate title ideas based off the actual essay that's been written. And we'll give you a few different title ideas to go with. And what I'll do is actually ask my students to copy down those ideas too, and I will ask them to rate them and kind of reflect on if these are decent titles for them too, or how they can make them better too. So it really is really flexible how you can use this, and it's all related to the interface, right? It's not just about the actual underlying language model, it's about how our students as writers interact with this. And again, I'll be repeating myself, but all the data that we have shows so far is that students are very reluctant to cede their writing over to this. And that sort of video I showed you from Microsoft of people basically saying, well, let's create a rough draft from all of our files and everything else. Yeah, Chris says turtles all the way down. Yes, infinite regress indeed. But how Microsoft envisions us using all of our data to just generate a rough draft is not how students, it's not how writers work, right? 90% of our thinking comes from the actual rough draft phase, the actual drafting phase. And I tell my students, it's like, look, if you are uncomfortable with something in your writing, write it down, do your rough draft. And then if you need to have actual help or support from a human being like me or the Writing Center, or if you'd like to use the AI to assist you in that to get some feedback, then those are really good ways of sort of being introduced to the actual language model as we go through it. So I think we have another question here. I think we've got, so I'll pause here for 1 second. I'll answer the question. What are the demographics of students you're surveying? College students versus high school? Oh, I should have probably mentioned that. I'm so sorry. Yes, we teach primarily 90% of our students are first-year writing students and first-year composition students. I'm also teaching now digital media studies, and those are mostly juniors and seniors, but it's all higher education students. It is not high school. It is not middle school at all. Good question. Should we pause if there's other questions you all would like to have?
Mark, I just was
Yeah.
wondering if the students with whom you've worked, if they understand how like ChatGPT works, like what a large language model is, whether they understand it and whether you feel like they need to understand how all this works in the background.
That's a great question. I've tried now for 3 semesters to explain this to them and to go over this. They don't necessarily want to hear about the actual sort of mechanics of what's underneath the hood. That is a problem for AI literacy, I think, and that is something that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I think personally that they do need to understand what's going on with them too. Just to give you a recent update of what happened in the last week and a half, Perplexity, which I'll show you guys in a second, just trained its own language model, and they chose to do so without any safeguards. So the sort of chats that would be shut down in OpenAI because of all the human reinforcement learning and safety do not get shut down within Perplexity's language model. And that becomes a huge issue with safety and also with just ethics in general to release something like that in the public. And I do show my students an example from that. I'll show you there too. I don't do anything bad. I just basically ask it how I would rob a bank and get away with it, so that they understand that what they're seeing from these language models is really a fine-tuned example of data that's been collected in some ways not ethically from the internet and then aggregated back to them. And so when I first talked with my students about this in the fall and told them we were going to use AI, I did have 2 fraternity brothers in the back, my freshman students, high five each other, thinking that this was going to be the greatest experience that they've ever had and that they were never going to have to do anything ever again. And by the midpoint in the semester, one of those students was in my office and his knees were shaking, and he was very concerned because we'd gone through all the AI technologies. And he basically was asking me, am I going to have a job when I graduate from here? Because he was so concerned about the way the world was changing so quickly. So I don't mean to say that to frighten students, but it is, I think, something to give them a little bit of a grasp of what's going on with the world.
So
Right.
rather than fearing that our students might be using AI technology, we should actually be steering them toward AI technology as
Well,
that.
that's the problem. And this is the thing, like it becomes almost like a self-perpetuating myth in some ways, right? Like I think that if you can practice with them in selective interfaces, then it's a much better situation than them on their own coming to ChatGPT, generating an essay, thinking that what they're dealing with is correct, is true, is not hallucinated content, and understanding about how they can actually pragmatically and ethically use this tool in their actual education.
Hey, there's another question there in the chat.
Oh, Chris is saying the AI companies keep changing their systems and putting some features behind a paywall and others remain free but operate differently. Have you found that this creates challenges, and do you see challenges down the road for Lex remaining free and accessible? Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. Lex is our 3rd writing assistant tool that we piloted now in 3 semesters. It keeps on changing. And Lex will eventually go behind a paywall, and many of them other tools will also go behind a paywall as well too. And that is a major concern. GPT-4, that is now in the paid version of ChatGPT Plus, the $20 a month plan, is very different than GPT, the free version of ChatGPT. It does not hallucinate sources as much. It actually pulls live information from the web. And it does become a situation that if you are having certain students use it versus other students that are trying to use the free plan, that creates this equity and balance with technology in some ways. I think that Lori says, Who better to teach the proper way to use the tool than teachers who know how to use them? Kind of like smartphones in classrooms, we need to teach proper use. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I hope that we're doing that. I think the one big problem that we're facing right now is that the tools keep on changing so rapidly that it's hard to even judge how to use them from one day to the next in some cases. And also kind of sort of goalposting what they're actually capable of for one moment, and then they come out with a new feature. I think I mentioned earlier in our presentation today that Google is upgrading their underlying language model for their systems. It's going to be called Gemini, and word on the street is that's going to be more powerful than GPT-4. So the models keep on getting bigger, they keep on getting more robust. Their ability to do things keeps on changing as well too. We got another question. Would open source models like leaked Facebook version Llama ever present legitimate free open source version? Yep, it's legitimate right now. In fact, Perplexity, which I'll show you in a minute, actually hosts the Llama version for free for you to use. And I think they're going to use that free through Perplexity Labs for the time being. And I'll definitely show you that in just a few minutes. So these are some wonderful questions. I want to hear more questions, but there's a lot more for you guys to think about and a lot more to show you. So I'm just going to go ahead, if that's okay, and show you a few more things, at least 2 or 3 more things for the presentation here today. So I'm going to go back to our sheet. And so this is a good time to go into Perplexity, which we just kind of mentioned there too. So there are some purpose-built research assistants that use generative AI technology to actually not hallucinate and make up sources. They're fine-tuned and sort of rein in the sort of generalization issue with a lot of the language models into much more specific calls to embedded files, which is basically a fancy way of saying that this will actually work as a search engine in some cases. And Perplexity is one of the better models that's actually available on the market. It's free to use. And it is got a lot of good different features available to it. So I will go ahead and show you that. It should be free to sign up. It's a very simple interface. You can go ahead and ask it any question here too, but what I tell my students is that we're going to click on the focus button first. And in this case, you can search all through the web. It gives you a list of academic and pop culture sources, YouTube, even Reddit. I tell my students, I don't really want you guys searching for academic sources on Reddit. I would like you to please search through academic sources. So we can click on academic sources, and then they can ask any sort of question that they'd like related to a research question or a research topic. And they can also switch on the Copilot mode. And you notice when I hover over that, it says 5 left, reloads every 4 hours. Well, what the developer's doing is that they're giving free access away to GPT-4, the most powerful language engine on the market right now. And they're limiting that to 5 calls specifically to the actual technology. So I'll click on Copilot just so you guys can see this. And I'll just go and ask, what are some harms about social media use? And we'll get some topics here. All right, so it's going to go through it's going to go through the actual understand the questions too. It might ask them some follow-up questions. And it shows you how many sources it's going through and searching through their scholarly sources. And then it's going to present an actual, hold on one second. So what specific aspects of social media and harms are interested in? Well, I just want to focus on just privacy and security. So this is another way that you can narrow down the search topic too. And we send there to it, and it goes back through the sources. And what it's going to do is generate a summary and sort of an overall synthesis of what those sources talk about related to your topic that pulls from actual sources. In this case, it's over, I think, 25 sources that are here. And it is listed all here too in the actual footnotes. So they will go to real sources. See, you got a real source there and real source here too. And so students can then query this with their own natural language. They can start testing research questions. They can start thinking about engaging counter arguments and opposing opinions. One of my colleagues here that's on the actual developed an assignment here called stress testing claims using Perplexity. And she actually developed and donated an assignment here, which is on our Google Sheet, about how to do that with the actual program itself. So it's a really powerful platform that goes into this situation of using generative AI to look at actual live sources. Often what I will tell my students to do is to go through the actual process of searching through Perplexity from the first place. I'll go back here to the top. I don't know why it's not doing that for 1 second. Let me go back to Perplexity. And I'll have them do a credibility exercise. Is it looking at sources that normally need to be purchased online? Lori asked that question. No, it's open access journal articles for the most part. It's not like library databases. This is, again, going back to that question with Lex, too. Our students pay a significant amount of money for access to our academic library database. And time again, after I've trained them and showed them how to use this, they've told me that the user interface is not good for them to use. And they either go to Google Scholar or they go to something else. And I think this is actually going to change how those databases work. I hope so, because this is actually, I think, a good use case of looking at different types of data, different types of resources for their actual research projects. I still do teach them the library resource. I still do require them to use sources from the library database, but this is just a new thing that has come along here. So again, we've got lots of things to show you guys, but that's Perplexity for the actual research portion of it. If you go down to the very bottom of the page, it says labs. I think someone asked about this. This is where you can actually try out all the free actual language models that they are hosting. Now they have the Perplexity 70B online. That's the one that they just released. They also have the Llama model 2 that is released from Meta as well. So you can use those language models yourself. I did develop an assignment with my digital media studies students who were really in a sort of deep dive course about generative AI and technology, about red teaming and AI. And that's how we actually red teamed Perplexity 70B online. And I'll just type in what I said before too about how to rob a bank. And of course, get away with it. Now, if this was OpenAI, if this was Google or Microsoft's AI too, they would shut down this conversation for lots of human reinforcement learning, but that is not the case for Perplexity. Always remember, it's a serious crime, but here's the way to actually get rid of it. And make sure you don't get lazy when you end up robbing that bank, of course. Very cautiously deploying this in any sort of situation with students. I gave them lots of opt-outs and clear instructions about what to ask the language model and what not to ask the language model in this case. Even though they were junior and seniors, it still is something to kind of think about, giving them access to something like this. Perplexity's actual argument about deploying a model like this is kind of interesting. They will say that a lot of the models on the market right now, if you're using this for any type of research that involves subjects that would maybe shut down conversation, maybe I'm a pharmacist researching fentanyl overdoses. Well, that conversation would be shut down in OpenAI. Or if I'm a social scientist studying the language of harassment in online workplaces, because of that language being used, the language model would not send back a response because of all the human reinforcement learning. So the sort of debate between open and closed models is that these open models need to be in existence alongside of the actual marquee private models like OpenAI's, because it gives researchers more flexibility to see how they're trained and how they function, and also users how they can be used out there in the wild too. So that's a little bit of a tangent. I know someone in the actual chat asked about the actual language models, so you can just go to Perplexity Labs and log in there and go from that point on. So we do have a few more things to show you. I know it's a lot. It's kind of overwhelming, and I apologize in advance. But one of the things that I did pilot with my students that was sort of shocking to me that existed was a reading assistant called Explain Paper. I was not aware that AI could actually help students read. And that has been sort of, I talk with my wife about this all the time. I hope to talk with you guys about this. Y'all, we need a discourse about this. We need to stop talking about writing generation. We need to start talking about reading generation, because it's amazing what this could do for students that have disabilities, students who are non-native English speakers. But as my wife, who also teaches with us here in the department, is much smarter than I am, caveat with everything, has told me multiple times, she said, well, what is this going to do with close reading skills? Because you can upload any sort of document to generative AI now, and you can select it to your reading level, and it will change the actual document into a generated summary, whether that's a sentence, a word, a phrase, just to that reading level. And I'm a creative writer in this background. I have an MFA from creative writing from Texas State University. I've published fiction. If someone put in my short fiction or a poem that I wrote before in the past, and they asked to summarize it, I can tell you from tests on my own too, that this will change the actual tone, the structure, the style of it, and will reduce it down to just information. So this is one of those things that we really need to be talking about and thinking about, and considering what this means for education, because these tools are going to be very widely available very soon, and more students are going to be knowing about this as well too. So I'm going to quickly show you what Explain paper looks like. It's also free to use. I do have an assignment here too about exploring and challenging reading, and it's already uploaded here, I believe. So very simple user interface. I already have my essays uploaded here as PDFs, and I can upload them here, upload them as well if you'd like. But what I'm going to do is look at Neil Postman's essay, and I'll zoom in so you guys can see this. And hopefully you guys can see it too. So I've assigned my students this essay by Neil Postman from his book, Technopoly, The Surrender of Culture to Technology, about the judgment of Thamos, using Plato's allegory to talking about technology. It's an older article, it was published, it's an older chapter from his book that was published in 1992. Trust me, when I try to assign this reading to my students, it's basically like dropping a shoe in the room and just seeing them sort of flee in front of it. They don't really find it very engaging for all those reasons. So I did test this with them because it's a really great article about how we are sort of just sort of blindly adopting these technologies without thinking about it. And I told them, like, look, don't use the AI to read the entire article. Read the article, but when you reach a pain point within it in some way, shape, or form where you basically find yourself disengaging from the reading to, then consider calling upon AI assistance. Okay, so let me show you how this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a phrase here. In this case, Thamism, skepticism, down here below. And I highlight it now too. I'm going to take my finger off the button. And now you can go ahead and set and customize your explanation. I can set it to a high schooler level, an undergrad level, a graduate, professional, or expert. I can even go down to a middle school level, or even a 5-year-old. I'll just do it as a high school level. I'll click on Explain. Now, this is the free version. You can pay for access to GPT-4, but in all my testing too, the free version has been perfectly fine. So it'll explain the actual source, and we'll explain it to them in the language of a high schooler. So probably about an 8th grade reading level. What's really cool about this is there are related resources that actually go back to live resources where the student can actually go explore more of the actual source if the actual language model has access to that on the internet. So they can actually go through looking at Neil Postman's book by Technopoly and other articles he's published about this, and other critical readings about it too. The other cool part is you can then ask follow-up questions about the actual source itself. So I'm going to click on Ask Follow-up Questions. So I'm going to say, well, why does this matter? View the text. And it gives an answer, and passage and phrases too, and responds to it. And you can really go really deep into this and highlight individual words, phrases, full sentences, even entire paragraphs, and get explanations from the actual language model. So when I first tested this with students, the one thing that I can tell you is that their response was overwhelmingly positive about this. And I think the one thing that it really shocked me was I had students who self-disclosed in the reflections that they had suffered from disabilities in the past and were not comfortable a lot of times disclosing that to people. And having a tool like this made them so much more comfortable going into a situation where they could read something and not feel like they were being isolated in some way by going in and try to ask for accommodations. I did have one non-native English-speaking student who talked about how easy it was to code switch between his native language and English to go through assignments. So that was all good. That was all really heartening to actually hear because of the actual material. But then when I talked to a lot of my other students, they're like, look, reading's done now. I'm done with this. I'm not going to read anything more ever again. And I tried to sit down and talk with them and explain to them, like, look, close reading is an important skill to have in life. You're going to need that. And some of them were just very much so like, that's great. That's wonderful. I now have this. And what I tried to impart onto them is what happens in a world where their boss looks at their actual work too and uses a reading assistant to summarize their work for them. What does that actually mean to them? And that didn't really work. But then when I said, well, what happens when you submit an essay and I use a machine, an algorithm like Explain Paper to then just summarize your actual argument to me? And they were like shocked, like, you can't do that. That's cheating. I said, well, yeah, but that's what this technology basically is in the world right now. And that's why we have to be very careful and thoughtful about how we use it. And so that is when the light bulb for many of them did click off. But if there's anything that I hope we can start a discourse on, it's absolutely about how generative technology like large language models impacts reading, because there's been so little being talked about that right now in the actual space at all too. So I think I've talked for a while now. Do you want to just pause here to answer some questions? There's some other things we can go on the list too, but I think that this is a lot for a lot of people to sort of absorb. I think Lori was asking too, talking about this, that looks like a higher level than my high schoolers. Yeah, it's sometimes very difficult for the language model to take a topic like this, because he was actually making up the phrase themism, skepticism for his own use case and actually narrow that down for an actual discussion as well too.
Mark, I was just curious, based on what you've shown us, which is pretty amazing. If you had to take a guess as where things will be in 5 years, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the new research question will be, how much of my own labor is exposed to automation, and what does that mean for me as a teacher? What does that mean for my students and learners too? There are wearable technologies that are coming out now. There's a pen from a company called Humane, from some ex-Apple employees that you pin on your chest, and it uses OpenAI's language model to record conversations, videos as well. We just had a major update from ChatGPT 4 with vision and with voice. That sounds very human in some ways. You can program it for the voice, you can program it for anything you'd like. And all those systems are going to be merged together in some way, shape, or form. And they will be sold to our students. They're going to be sold to us as ways to offload our labor and make our lives easier. And what concerns me is that there's going to be things that are lost in that process, namely things like learning. I'm not quite sure how we resist that. I think the best way to do that is to understand what these models are capable of. To do what I'm doing right now is to talk with people about this too, to start getting this on their radar so that they know this is out there, and to really start considering the fact that this technology, I don't think it's going to be sentient in any way. This is just going to be very, very powerful text prediction and next word prediction for a very long time, but it's still going to have an impact on our lives and our teaching, most definitely.
Thank you.
There's another question. Do you think we'll see something that looks like AGI within 10 to 25 years?
If there is, I'm going to a cabin in the woods. I don't think so yet. I think that everything I've heard from the actual researchers who are designing this is that the transformer architecture that's powering all these different types of models would need to have a complete leap in design to actually get to the level where it was actually sentient. They have really improved the hallucinations. That's the making up part, but they're never going to entirely get rid of it, because there's no way these models can actually reality test an idea. There's no way it can actually go through that. A language model doesn't think. a language model only interacts with the world as a series of tokens, predicting the next token in a word, the next token in a sentence, the next token in a paragraph. The thing that makes it so wild is that it does that all at once. Not like us in sequence when we're reading something, but it's looking at every one of those items at the same time. And it's just using math to predict what would come next. So we're not quite yet with AGI. I think Lori, I hope I answered Lori's question about hallucinations. It's making up stuff. Yeah, quantum computing might be that case, but again, cabin in the woods for me, cabin in the woods. I think Chris had a comment too. It says, one thing that seems potentially promising about my essay feedback is that the teacher-driven simulates a community of practice. Teachers can share assignments and see others' assignments as well too. It sits atop GPT-4. It's more stable. I wonder if it's possible for other aspects of writing and reading to be addressed in this way too. I love my essay feedback. Eric Keene is definitely developing that too. I'm actually advising him a little bit on that project. I'll just show you that very briefly too, so we can see this, because it is on the sheet. I'll go back to share it. And we have my essay feedback. It is in pilot stage. I've used it this semester for the first time, and I've selected what assignments I want to program to allow my students to get some generated feedback on. They know it's an AI when it's when it's actually been done that way. I'll go and log in and show you behind the scenes here. All right, so let me go to my courses real quick. Be clicking around here for just a minute, so just bear with me because I got to get this sample to show you how it works. And we'll go up to types of feedback. Oh, no, 1 second. And I will go ahead and edit this actual exercise. This should show where it is. Okay, so this is the actual edit field, and let me zoom in, or see if I can zoom in here a little bit so you guys can see this. But this is how you actually set up the assignment for the actual language model to do. This is just a source assignment too, for students to find a source and begin annotating it with their actual own language. And then an actual prompt that I would put in there to help students get some structured feedback that I designed and set up some guardrails for. So that's the assignment. And so when I want to go ahead and test the assignment, I go up here to where we say types of feedback, and the source evaluation feedback's here, and I edit it. And so here's my actual prompt. I tell the actual language model, the GPT-4 in this case, your job is to review the student's evaluation of a source and provide structured critical feedback to help them revise and improve their assignment. A student should include the following materials, and that's copied from the actual instructions. And then you could set up with some very strict guardrails that don't allow them to ask follow-up questions. But I basically just use that in the guidelines features here below. In this case, I say you are a university and writing instructor teaching first-year composition class. Provide helpful feedback to the student, but do not provide specific rewrites even if asked. Don't want them using this machine, don't want them using this interface to just rewrite it. I just want it to give them feedback. And so I can go ahead and test the actual assignment here. That's what I copied from before. And I'll send the signal to the language model. And it will test it. So this is the prompt that's shown to the students up above where it says you here. And then this is the actual generated feedback. And then students then have the option to ask optional feedback as well. So it usually gives some very structured, tailored feedback. It's far more robust than the feedback I give it when I give my actual material to. But I will tell you that there are some students that dislike the fact that they're getting a robotic feedback. One student in their reflection said that this is very spot on, very straightforward, but it feels robotic and soulless. I much rather prefer going to the Writing Center to actually have personalized feedback. The other student who also reflected on this too was in the same group, because I like to group my students too when they're reflecting. And she chose the opposite version. She said that it's too hard for her to actually get onto campus because she was living off campus to visit the Writing Center to have a tutoring appointment for a face-to-face tutoring example too. So she liked using my essay feedback for that. So lots of possibilities, lots of things are now available to people out there in the world.
Okay, you have one more question, and it is 5:31. So if first, let us thank you all for coming, and please join us, and as opposed to our every third Thursday of the month in December, because of the holiday and the end of the semester for many of us, we've moved our December webinar to December 7th. So please check your emails for information that should be coming to you in the next couple of days about that, and invite a friend. Invite a friend to join us for that. Yes, that was fast.
It was fast indeed, but I really thank you all for this. And I mean, the best thing you can possibly do, and I think that we have one question here too, what advice you can give for high school educators introducing this technology ethically to your students, is to talk to them about this. Let them know that the world is changing around them too, and that a lot of this is being driven by gigantic tech companies that are trying to sell a product to you, and that these do have if you're trying to offload a skill to this, there is a cost to that going down the road. We don't know if that's an environmental cost, if that's a cost for the actual material too, or if it's just a cost to learning, but it is there. I will tell you this, for the last 3 semesters, my students have actually been engaged in my classes because we've been talking about this, and it's because of them being exposed to this in their world too.
Mark, I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us. This was a fantastic presentation. And in the Google Doc, I think, Mark, is where they can access the course that you said would be open.
Absolutely.
It's in the Google Doc that you received. And for individuals who are not here today, we will send out the link to the presentation and let them know that they too can access the course once they have seen the webinar. Thank you very much. You have done an incredible job. And looking forward to taking the course and keeping up with you and all of the different things that we're learning about AI right now.
Well, thank you so much.
Calculated
This has been
moment
great.
for languages.
Yeah, we are in definitely a moment too. And I also, I think, put my email on the Google Doc too. So if you would like to ask some follow-up questions that way too, or get in contact with me, I'm very happy to do that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank you very
wonderful
much.
evening, everyone.
Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.